I wanted to take a look at fatherhood just a little bit because that is an extreme privilege. Fatherhood is a gift. It's a gift from God. Not only to have a father in your life, but also to be one. To have that model of our Heavenly Father, which of course we can't live up to, but we do our best to be in the image of Him and the tremendous love that the Father has had for us. I thought to myself this question that came to my mind this morning when you think about your kids. I don't know, those of you who have more than one, if you've ever been asked this question or if you've ever thought this question. And this is the question. If you were being held at gunpoint, and in order for you to have your life continue, or basically you were told, look, you have to, one of your children's going to go. So which one is it? That's why it's good to have an only child. I think that's why my mom did that, mom and dad. Huh? Exactly, okay. That's the thing, I've thought of that question many times. It's like, okay, which one? And people go, well, what would be the things that would come into your mind to consider that criteria, right? So you can think, which one did I spend the most time with? Which one has the most merit? Which one? And the reality is, you just can't do it. You just can't do it. Jill's response is exactly the conclusion I came to. I'd rather die than make that choice. That would be a much better option. Keeping that in context, that launches us into the passage we're going to look at this morning. We're going to bring it up in Genesis chapter 22, 1 through 18. I think one of the most dramatic moments of fatherhood in the Bible. And that is the story of Abraham and his son Isaac. I was thinking early in the week, it's like, God, what do you want us to talk about on Father's Day? And this passage just came into my head. This thought came into my head. I don't usually go here for Father's Day, but this year it was going to be this one. And let me set the scene for you. Abraham had a miracle child, I guess you could say. A child that had been promised. A child that God was going to give him and Sarah. And there were some obstacles there. It had been a long time. It was a miracle. It says, the Bible describes Abraham at an age as, I don't know that we like this definition, but he described him as good as dead when it came to having a child at this point. And Sarah is up there pushing over 90 years old, close to 100 years old, way beyond the age of childbearing. And God promised that they would have this child. It was so ridiculous that Sarah laughed when she heard it. And God was like, why is she laughing? And then they had to try to explain it. That's how ridiculous it was. But God made a promise. And if there's anything we need to understand about our Father God this morning, if there's anything we need to take to the bank, if there's anything that we need to rely upon as we make decisions in our life, hard decisions, and that is this: God keeps His promises. You and I may not, due to ability, opportunity, whatever it is, change of mood, whatever, but God is faithful. He's always faithful. What He says He will do in His perfect timing. So they get this child, Isaac, and this child begins to grow up. It's this precious child. We've all hopefully had those in our life in some way or another, even if it's a nephew or somebody else, whoever it is. And it comes here, verse 1. It says, sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Now, God does not tempt us, the Bible tells us. A lot of times we want, I only did this because God tempted me. No. The evil one will tempt you, not God. He does not tempt us. But He will allow us and will put us through tests at times. And the reason for those tests is that that's how our faith is strengthened. Just like anything else, the way we get stronger is by putting things to the test, by putting things under pressure. Okay, even diamonds are created under what? Intense, crazy pressure. And out of that comes a diamond. Same thing with you and I in our lives. You say, I don't understand why I go through all these tests and difficult times. Some of it's brought on by us, but sometimes it isn't. And we're saying, I still don't get it. Well, these tests create strength. And God knows that. And they also at times demonstrate the faith that God has put in us. We get through things and have an amazing peace in the decision making that there's only one explanation, and that is the Spirit of God that's at work inside of us. This example right here is a great one. It says, God tested Abraham's faith, and he came to him. He said, Abraham, God called. I don't want to gloss over that. Are there times when you just feel God calling your name? Now, if you're hearing audible voices and seeing visions in the corner, I might question it. Make sure you haven't had something bad to eat or whatever. I'm not saying it can't happen. But I will tell you I've never actually had that. But I have had times when I just know and sense and can hear, even though not audible, I know God's just really calling my name. And this was a very dramatic moment. He says, Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. And here were the instructions. Think of these were the instructions to you. Whether you're a father, whether you're a mother, whether you're a parent, whether you're a grandparent. Think about this. Here's what God said. Take your son, your only son. Yes, Isaac. He wanted to make sure he understood exactly who he was talking about, that there was no mistake. Whom you love so much. And go to the land of Moriah. Oh, cool, we get to go on vacation. Yes, all right, that's awesome. We're going to go on a trip. It's okay, right? Let's say I went to Gabriel back there and I said, hey, take your son, and here's tickets to the Dodger game. Go ahead and go. You'd be okay with that? All right. Do you have a particular, is that bobblehead night or something? Oh, okay. Here's 2 passes. Brendan, here, take your sons, either one. Here's 2 passes to Disneyland. Go. No problem, right? No problem. Take your son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, go to the land of Moriah. What's the land of Moriah? Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. That is not what we would expect. If God called you today and said, you take your child, you take the one, you know who it is, the one that you love so much, and right now I want you to go, and I want you to take them on a trip, and I want you to sacrifice them to me. Sacrifice them as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I'm going to show you. How excited are we? Oh, I can't wait to go. Probably not. What if God would ask you to do something like this? Any of us in this room. You know, sometimes he does. It may be a child. It may be something else in your life that we hold very, very dear. But you know, the Bible tells us that our God will have no other gods before him, and our God is to be number one before everything else, and our God is actually a jealous God. And there may be something that we hold dear in our life, and it's even been put in front of God in our relationship with him. And God would be the only one who would have the right to come and say and test, am I number one above all else? It could be a spouse. It could be a job. It could be a career. It could be some other type of recognition. It could be a possession. It could be a car. And God asks that question. It could be your fame. It could be your pride. Is he number one above all else? For everyone, it will be different. But I believe that for all of us in our life, there will be those moments when God asks us, am I first? And he will put it to the test. How will we pass the test when it comes? Let's see what Abraham did. The next morning, not next week. Oh, you know what? I'll get that on my calendar, God. Okay, yeah. You know, God, I see I'm kind of booked up. Let's do, you know what? I think I have some openings in July 2048. Let's do that. I'll mark you in. Hopefully you'll forget about it by then. The next morning, when God tells us to do something, this is what we have to understand here. When God tells us to do something, don't bargain around, putting it off, hoping he'll change his mind, hoping circumstances will change. No, you do it. That's very hard for us. There are times in our life when God says, you're done with this. This is what I want you to do. And he doesn't want us to wait. He just wants us to do it. It's funny, often we'll use even spiritual responses to these directions from God. You know what? Let me pray on that. Who are you praying to? He just told you. I want to pray on that, God, that you change your mind. Is that what we're doing? No, he just told you. He made it very clear. There was no mistake here. Abraham knew it was the voice of God, and it was very clear what he told him to do. So the next morning, Abraham got up. This is how you knew he meant business. He got up early. Some of us have trouble with that too, right? For this morning, I will confess, I did this yesterday too, because there were places I needed to be. The day before, this doesn't usually happen to me, my alarm went off. And I guess I rolled over and I turned it off. Next thing I knew, I heard my dog barking. I go, oh, what time is it? Totally forgotten I'd even turned the alarm off. It was an hour later. And I had like 15, 20 minutes to completely get ready. And I'm a slow get ready person in the morning. You know, I got to do my hair. I got to do all that stuff. You would think it'd be fast, but it takes me like literally from start to finish, it's 45 minutes to an hour before I get out. I guess I'm like I think women get ready faster than me in some cases. But, and so I just like really had a rush. So yesterday morning for the mini camp, which was great, by the way, it went really, really well. And several children made decisions for Christ and everything. It was a great day. I had to get up early. Nobody else was in the house because Val was already gone. She was already out there. And so I actually set 2 alarms. That's the great thing you can do on your phone these days, you know. We use it for everything else. You could set 10 alarms if needed, right? Especially for those of you who just like snooze is your friend and you just keep pushing the same thing. So I set 2 alarms today, too, because I wanted to make sure that I got here. Getting up early, I can stay up late. Getting up early is not, and especially if I'm not looking forward to something, we tend to get up late, right? No, Abraham meant business. He wasn't playing around. God gave him a command. He knew it was serious. He got up early the next morning. He saddled his donkey, took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Yes, no, he did not leave him at home. You know what a lot of us do? The one thing that we know God wants, we try to avoid that at all costs. Somebody told me something just last week. They said, hey, I'm moving. I'm excited about where I'm moving because I get the opportunity to move, but I'm afraid to move. I said, why? And they said, well, right next to me, right next to where I'm moving, there's a church. And it's a Baptist church. I'm afraid because then I'm going to get lazy and then I'm not going to come here. And I go, just come. Doesn't matter, right? This is your part of here. It's not here, by the way. But, yeah. We tend to, sometimes things that get put in our path, we tend to try to stay away from them because we're worried. No, he took Abraham. He took Isaac early in the morning. He chopped the wood for a fire for a burnt offering. It would have been convenient not to do that, right? Oh, sorry, Lord. I forgot the wood. There's nothing to do it. Like when someone gets there and you go, did you bring something? Oh, I forgot. What does that tell you? It tells you it was not important to them, and you're not surprised because you knew they really didn't want it to do it to begin with, and that's why they don't have it. They conveniently forgot, right? Many a child has done that. Many of adults don't grow out of it. We conveniently forget. He chopped the wood for a fire for burnt offering, set out for the place. Wow, this is good. The place God actually had told him about. He followed instructions. How many of you can remember taking that test in school with a long list of directions? Ever given that test? It's got about 30 directions on the paper. I'm going to give you a hint if you've never taken one of those tests. What you see is all of a sudden you're confused because you look to your right and they're like, turn your paper over when you're done. And like 4 or 5 people in the room, they're done like in 60 seconds. And you're like, how is that possible? You're folding paper, cutting it, reversing it, writing on it, making paper airplanes out of it, whatever else you're doing. And then you get to the last direction after it said, the first line said, read all directions carefully before proceeding, right? That's line number 1. And then you get to the last line number 25, and it says, disregard all of this and just turn your paper over. Disregard everything that you read, except for line number 1, right? But because we refuse to follow the instructions of what it said right in the beginning, read all instructions before proceeding, we make a mess out of everything. All right? That's what we often do with God. God gives an instruction, and we look and do everything else instead. And then later on, we're like, I don't understand why everything's such a mess. The instructions are very simple. All we have to do is follow them, even if they don't make sense. So, on the 3rd day of their journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Stay here with the donkey, Abraham told the servants. Now, why would he do that? Hey, if I wanted to get out of this, I'd bring the servants along. Wouldn't you? All right, God, I tried to do it, God, but the servants didn't understand and they held me back. Somebody get me out of this. I brought the biggest, strongest, most muscular, youthful, energetic servants along that hopefully they can stop me from doing what God has told me to do. We do this in life, right? Let me set up a whole bunch of barriers and things around it, what God is telling me to do, so hopefully I won't be able to do it, and I can say to God, God, I tried. No, he told the servants, stay here. The boy and I will travel a little further. We will worship there, and then we will come right back. Hey, was he lying? Sounds like it, doesn't it? At first glance, it sounds like, we're going to find out later he wasn't lying. But at first glance, it sounds like Abraham lied. You're like, what do you mean? He tells them, hey, we'll go up there, we'll worship, and we'll come back. He was going to sacrifice his son on the altar. Was he bringing him back in a body bag? Is that how they're doing it? I mean, that seems like a lie. So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders. That was nice. Let him carry it for himself. By the way, there's a lot of, does this sound familiar, by the way? God gave his only son, and his only son had to carry his own cross. Interesting parallel, isn't it? He let Isaac carry the wood that was going to be used for the sacrifice. He placed it on his shoulders while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, what any inquisitive mind would want to know. Father, yes, my son, Abraham replied. You have the fire, you have the wood. The boy said, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering? Isaac knew how this went. Isaac knew how this went. There was a very key ingredient missing. And Abraham's response, God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son, Abraham answered, and they both walked on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on the top of the wood. Now, there's something that's not said here, though, but we need to use our brains for just a moment. Abraham was old. Isaac was probably a teenager. So logic follows this. If some 90 to 100-year-old man is trying to take a teenage young man, and forcibly tie him down on an altar to sacrifice him, do you think that the 16-year-old could, in protest, fight him off? Yeah. We don't know the rest of the conversation that took place here, but we do know this. Isaac had to also willingly trust his father and allow himself to be put on that altar. That's tough. And Abraham picked up the knife. Notice this. He picked up the knife. I know what we in hindsight, we look back at this story now, and this is what we're thinking. We get up there, we're there, okay, Isaac's on the thing, he's tied down. It's like, okay, God, anytime. I followed your instructions. Okay, this has been a great joke. But anytime you want to step in here. No, he picked it up. To kill his son as a sacrifice. That is commitment and dedication. Where's the line for you and I? What is it where we say, for some of us that line is very high, for some of us it's very low. Where is it that we say, God, I follow you and I obey you up to this point, no further? Abraham, he picked it up. There was only one other direction for it to go. Down. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Abraham replied, here I am. I can almost hear the sound of relief. Don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. What kind of crazy test was this? Well, how else would it be proven that it was God above all else? That's why when you have these times of testing in your life, don't get angry. Don't get frustrated. Don't get mad. Don't tell God how unfair he is. God is in control. It may be hard for us humanly, difficult, yes, God, why haven't you fixed it? Why are you allowing things to be this way? But there's only one way to prove that true faith, and that's through those extreme tests. Let's see the end of the story. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in the place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh-Yireh, which means the Lord will provide. To this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. And then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says, because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand of the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies. And through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because what? You have obeyed me. We look at this and we see the amazing obedience of a loving father who loved his son. But why was he really able to do that? Why would you be able to do that in a situation like that? One other passage we're going to just cross-reference real quick as we close. It's found in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 17 and 19. This story, Abraham in this story, in this account, are put in what we call the Hall of Faith, where God lists several people who showed extreme faith in their lives. By the way, God calls us to do the same. And it says, it was by faith that Abraham offered Isaac. It was by faith that he did it. As a sacrifice when God was testing him. Abraham, who had received God's promises, was ready to sacrifice his only son Isaac, even though God had told him, Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted. Abraham reasoned that if Isaac died, God was able to bring him back to life again. And in a sense, Abraham did receive his son back from the dead. God knew, just like you and I need to know, that God's promises are true. God is in control, and God can do anything. God does not make mistakes. So if he tells us to do something, even though it doesn't make any sense, when it's clear in faith, we do it because he will do the miraculous if he has to still fulfill the promises that he's made in our life.